property.
What about for those out there that are talking about, there's that theory about reorientating your bees by packing bushes in front of the hive?
Yeah, bushes, mirrors, we've heard all kinds of things.
Right, coffee with Kristie.
Coffee with Kristie!
Okay, quick one. So we had a couple of questions this week about moving of hives, and people want to know how far can they want to move their hive basically to the corner of the yard. So, and there's a very common debate. Everyone talks about it the whole time. And
a lot of people say it's not possible, but it is possible, so long as you understand the way that the bees work. So bees have a very intricate GPS system. And so when they come back from foraging, they come directly to where their hive is. If they come to their hive and it's not there, they will look 1 meter from there. If they can't find it 1 meter from there, they will basically just sit there and clump together and die. So you can move your hive so long as it's a sunny day. Yeah. You can move them 1 meter per day. So let's say I wanted to move the hive just 5 meters down from where it is currently.
Yeah.
Day 1, I might put it up in a wheelbarrow. That's 1 meter.
Yeah.
And then day 2, one step until we get to the 5 meter point.
Okay.
Keeping in mind it should be on a sunny day, not on a day like today where it's all rainy and cold.
Why?
Because the foragers aren't going to leave today. They'll stay in the hive. So they're not going to reset that 1 meter. By the time the next
sunny day comes out, it's going to be 2 meters.
Exactly. So you want to move it 1 meter per sunny day. When the foragers are out, they'll come back. Oh, my hive's moved. Oh, I found it. No problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what happens in a case where, like, let's say now they've got one in this side of the yard and now they want to move the hive way to the other side. Let's call it 100 meters. I mean, to move 100 meters per sunny day. Let's say
100 days.
Yeah. 100 days, and you get some shady days in between, like overcast days, and it's a weekend, you're not there, or whatever it may be. It's going to take you a whole year to move it. What then?
Okay, so then I would recommend that you move your hive off your property completely.
How far?
Well, look, there's lots of debate around this. Minimum, I would say 3 kilometers. Maximum 6 kilometers. 6 kilometers is actually the ideal.
So not maximum 6 kilometers.
6 kilometers or more is actually.
Yeah. So 3 kilometers at the very least.
Absolute.
But I mean, okay. So here's the theory: if there's a flow going on, the bees basically forage as close as possible to the hive. So they don't fly 3 kilometers. They don't know what's there beyond that distance in any case. But if it's a dry season and they have to fly, let's say 3 kilometers to go and get food, they know what's on that perimeter. So then you would want to extend that range, wouldn't you?
Sure, yeah.
But when it's like you're in a flow, I mean, essentially...
The thing that I find is, it sounds horrible to say this, but I think a lot of beekeepers don't understand what is a flow. Yeah. So is it just when there's food coming in and out of the hive? Because that's not necessarily a flow.
Okay.
When your hive is able to literally double in size in a couple of weeks, that's a flow.
Okay.
So the problem I think is that sometimes we don't fully understand what does a flow look like. This year, the spring flow hasn't happened.
Yeah.
So people have been talking about a spring flow. We haven't had a spring flow.
Yeah.
Because there hasn't been that big jump in size in colonies in a short period of time, because that's essentially what a flow is.
Okay.
So rather than trying to
play
it safe, 6 kilometers, move your hives, and they must stay there for at least 3 weeks. That gives all the foragers that have a familiarity with that area time to die out, so that the new foragers that you'll now bring back with your colony when you bring it back to your home
have never been there before. Well, it may have been, but they were
inside the hive. They were nurse bees and so on. Yeah. Okay, so that's very important. At least 3 weeks at the other site, and then you can bring it back to anywhere you like on your property.
What about for those out there that are talking about, there's that theory about reorientating your bees by packing bushes in front of the hive?
Yeah, bushes, mirrors, we've heard all kinds of things. Guys, fine, take a chance, but at the end of the day, if it doesn't work, you're going to lose. That hive is not going to get resources for the next few weeks because none of the foragers are going to come back. Yeah. So how important is the health and ability for your hive to survive? How important is that to you? Do you really want to risk it?
Yeah.
If you don't have a site that you can move your bees to, call us. We've got sites scattered across the whole of KwaZulu-Natal, and perhaps we can help you out.
Yeah. So here's another, looking at a different view on that. If you're going, and I suppose like small business owners and accountants and stuff will all understand the concept of compound interest. And essentially that's the same thing that happens. Let's say you've got 10% of your colonies out foraging, right? They go out and now you move your hive and you lose that 10%. That hive won't die off because of the 10%. They'll simply upgrade the next lot, send them out as foragers and carry on. But you've lost that 10%. However, the 10% compounded. What happens when that 10% doesn't come back with all that food and stuff?
And it's not just that one day.
Yeah.
It's that bee's life.
That
so it's one
gonna
whole
say,
week.
hang on, the food's not coming in, stop laying.
Yeah.
So basically a compound, she stops laying, and there's less and less bees, so less bees to go out to forage, less bees coming back with work. So it's actually a snowball
effect,
yeah.
And so a lot of people think, it's not a big deal, it's just a few bees. Well,
even 5% can have a massive effect down the line.
Effect, especially if it's done in a time of the year when there's very little food available, or you're going into a time when there's little food.
Or the hive struggling a bit because the numbers are low.
All of that takes a big effect on the bees.
Yeah.
And then people will wonder, but why didn't my bees produce honey this year? Well,
back then when you shifted them 50 meters
and you put some branches there and thought it's okay.
So it can be done, but you got to know the risks.
And you got to know what the consequences are going to be.
And so if you pack branches in front there, won't they reorientate?
They might. But a lot of them, I always say to people, have you ever driven home and you can't remember how you got home? You were so tired, whatever. You remember getting home, but you don't remember the full journey. And I always say, if bees are out foraging and they're coming back, they're often on autopilot, habit, and they arrive where they should have gone, and they're like, where's my house? I'm too tired. And then it's gone. So they just don't go looking elsewhere. And maybe they did reorientate, but their GPS took them back to the old space. And when we first moved house, I once went to my old
place.
I'd reset. I know that I live in a different place, but I accidentally drove on autopilot home. Yeah.
So at the end of the day, you could be killing your bees, or you could be putting a big risk on your bees.
You're compromising them.
You're compromising them.
You're compromising the health of the hive by not following the rules.
Yeah. So you're taking a step back. You might rather do it properly.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take much effort. So if you're moving at 1 meter per day, you're going to do that on a sunny day
and
during
the day.
Okay.
Yes. Moving them 3 kilometers or 6 kilometers, we want 6.
What about those bees that went out early in the morning?
No, they'll come back to...
and they'll see, hang on.
Yeah.
And then they'll shift off a meter and then find
Remember in nature, let's say, for example, you've got a hive in a tree.
Yeah.
And there's a big thunderstorm and that tree falls down.
The hive
doesn't just stop.
Yeah.
They find their way again because it's a close proximity.
Yeah.
In nature, a tree's not very unlikely, especially in South Africa, going to blow 6 kilometers away.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So we also need to understand where it fits into nature. When we're moving bees, the 6 kilometers, we've got to do that at night.
Yeah.
And not dusk when it's still light.
Or the bees
must be dark and the bees must all be inside. Yeah. And then we'll use a sponge of some kind. You can either use a sponge like a dish sponge, or else an orange bag or something like that. But it must be porous. It must be able to breathe. And you'll plug the hive. And we normally have a rule that you never seal a hive in for longer than 5 hours. If you need to move bees an extreme distance, 5 hours is maximum, but you need to prepare for ventilation. So you would maybe put a super on there that's empty to allow for ventilation, or else you can actually get what they call a ventilation grill. So that the bees, that's the biggest thing, is ventilation, and making sure that you're not going to have cold air gushing into that hive. Because remember, the cold also kills the bees. So
a lot of people just say unplug it and drive with them unplugged.
You can't do that.
And then the entrance is blowing and there's wind pumping inside of the entrance. It's actually doing more damage.
Exactly. Also, a silly thing like making sure that when you are transporting the hive, that the entrance is faced backwards.
So what if you had the entrances open and you covered it with a shade cloth? And they're saying you were loading a whole bunch of hives.
It's illegal to transport bees that way.
Okay.
You actually have to seal them, and that's to prevent capensis and so on. You need to be aware of all the regulations. If you're going to be transporting hives, also you cannot transport them across the Fynbos border, moving into the Scootalata area upwards or downwards into the capensis area. So you need to be aware of where you're moving. So let's say, for example, I'm living up in Johannesburg and I decide I'm going to retire now, and I've got a few hives. And I'm retiring to the south coast. Fantastic. I can still move my bees down to the south coast with me.
South coast,
But if I'm moving to Cape Town, no, not allowed. So you just need to understand you can move bees a long distance. A lot of people do it for pollination, but ventilation is the key.
Just to come back on the 5 hours thing, I'd say maybe caution on, if you haven't had the experience on moving hives, I would try and keep it down to 2 hours if possible. The 5 hours is if you know what you're doing, you've done it hundreds of times, You know what your limits are in terms of the size. I mean, we've had first-hand
we've
experience.
had the worst
Our
experience
very
ever.
first delivery
Yeah.
of a mass hive, the whole bucky load of hives.
Yeah, and we lost
So,
lots of
went
colonies
wrong.
there.
Yeah.
Because we didn't really understand what we were
I think
doing.
that's a good story to tell. We'll do it on a video
Yeah.
sometime. Okay. So
Yeah.
so I would say limit it to 2 hours. Make sure that if you are going to move hives, put an extra super on top just for ventilation. Take honey out.
Any honey in the hive must be removed.
Yeah.
Because honey is very heavy, and if it breaks, it's going to drown your bees.
Yeah.
So we never transport hives with honey on them. So it takes a day of preparation. You've got to spend a day preparing your hive for the move. You can't just. I mean,
Pick
it's
them up and go.
just like when you move house. You've got to pack up everything.
Pack your boxes
You've got to
and
make sure
tidy
it's
up
all,
and
all bubble wrapped and whatever.
So we'll come back to that on another video where we're talking about moving hives. So just to sum up quickly, in terms of the, bees are reorientating and stuff like that. When you've moved them that 6 kilometers, do they reorientate there?
Yes. And
How do
usually
they know
the
that
next
they've moved?
morning. Well, I mean, they walk out, they're like, holy crap, this is not my home. This is not the same place.
Okay.
And so they'll then reorientate.
Okay.
And remembering also, if you've just caught a swarm, you've got one evening's grace.
So that
same day, you can move them anywhere you like.
But gently.
And they'll do the orientation the first thing the next morning.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So now you've moved them that 6 kilometers. We said about 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And after that 3 weeks, now you can move them back to your house anywhere where you want.
Yes.
And they won't remember.
Exactly.
Fantastic. Good.
Cool. Good luck moving your hives, guys. If you have any questions or any other comments, pop them down below. And subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss out on any other little golden nuggets. See you
later.
soon.